Beyond basic procedural textures, Modo also has a bunch of more advanced procedurals that you can use to create a very wide variety of different looks. So those are going to be called the enhanced Modo textures. So let's start by adding one of those to our scene here. We can see the kind of options that we have. So here I'm on the material for ball 1, and I'm going to go to add layer. And you can see that I have a whole section here of enhanced Modo textures. So I'm going to give a quick rundown of this, and then we'll look at how you can actually get more information on all of these individual textures. So we have options for different kinds of displays. You can have counters or LEDs. There are geometric enhanced Modo textures, so circular, box, cubic, dimples, grid, and these are going to be more advanced than the textures that we would get in just the regular textures settings. So a lot of different things you can do here. There are noise and organic, which are both going to give you more naturalized looking textures. There's a section for panels, which will allow you to apply things like metal plates or plates to a surface. But in addition to just having plates, you can also add in peel, which will add, it's good to add to a bump map. Will give you a little bit of kind of roughness at the edges of your plates. You can add rust where rivets would go. You can add rivets themselves. You can add just overall rust, and then some smear, which will give you some variation across the surface. Now, one cool thing about these, and this is going to be true of all of the enhanced Modo textures, is that they're going to be based off of an individual seed. So I'm going to go ahead and let's add plates onto here, and then I'm going to cut up to the camera for that sphere. And right now it's super small, so let's go in here to our texture locator, and I'm going to increase the size. One note is if you have something of a particular size here, if you hit auto size, it will try and give you something that it feels is the best size for it. In this case, it kept it at about 150 millimeters, so that's too small. So let's go up and set this to, I don't know, something like 3 meters. There you go. So now we can see kind of the look of the plates on here. So with plates, we have some options for our plate seed, which we can just click and change, and it's just going to change the randomized variation on the plates. There's plate disturb, which is going to be how much off we get of a basic grid. So if I set the disturb down to 0, so we just get a basic grid. If I increase that, let's go up to 50%, we get a more and more kind of convoluted version of that grid. And again, this is going to be something that you'll see throughout a lot of the enhanced Modo textures, is the option for doing some disturb to whatever the texture is to add a bit more variation to it. We have the plate distribution, so how many spaces that could have a plate are actually going to be filled. So as I turn this value down, we'll start to see that we get open gaps here and there. Okay, so if I turn it down even more, we'll start to see that we only get some spaces filled with plates. And as we increase that value, we see more and more of those spaces filled up. So I'm going to just kind of leave that there. So we have a few open spaces. And then we have also the options for the grout width, the bevel width, which is going to be how much fade there is. And if you're using a bump map, this can work very well. So what I'm going to do here is let's actually build up a quick texture using this. And that way we can see how not only can you use these textures for multiple layers, but also how they will tie into each other. So let's go ahead and I'm going to right click on this one. And I want to make this the bump map. So I'm going to create something that I want to stay the same as this. So I'm going to create an instance. So when you have an instance, you'll see it's italicized, and now any changes that I make to the base plates, it's also going to pass on to the instance here. So I'm going to change this from diffuse color. Let's just right click and go down to our surface shading and change that to bump. All right, now you can see that we kind of get the impression that we have a little bit of kind of depth where the plates are sitting up a little bit higher. And now what I'm going to do is add some other layers to this. So let's go ahead and I'm going to right click, and this time I'm not going to instance, I'm actually going to duplicate this one. And I'm going to change this from plates to, let's go down to change type, which again is just off screen for you. And I'm going to go again down to enhanced Modo textures, and I'm going to go down to panels. And in this case, I'm going to add on some rivets. All right, and what you'll see here happens at first is not going to make a lot of sense. What you'll see is we have a pattern of, essentially rivets going around the surface here. But the cool thing about this is it's going to adhere to the same standard as what's underneath, as long as you're at the same seed. So if I change this rivets here, let's go up to the texture layers, and I want to change, let's fold up this layer here so we can see here's our foreground and background colors. I want to change my color of my rivets. So let's change the rivets to something like, I don't know, kind of a, here, let's go with kind of a darker bluish color. Okay, so right now that's just sitting there and that's fine. But what I'm going to do is change my background alpha down to 0%. And now we'll actually be able to see the rivets laying over the top of the other stuff. So you can use this to very easily build up extra layers of detail within your objects, and it will help you to build more complex materials using these procedural textures. Now, there are a ton of different procedurals, and it really doesn't make sense to go through these one at a time in order to look at them because there's just so much there. The best thing to do is experiment, but you can have some guidance in your experimentation through the documentation. Now, you can really easily access the documentation that you need by simply going up to the Help menu and choosing Activate Help. And you'll see that the cursor now changes to a question mark. So if I mouse over this rivets texture here and click with that question mark turned on, see it's going to bring up a browser window that will tell me exactly what I need to know about this texture. Now by default, this is just going to come up here in this kind of blank web page, but you can choose to open this topic with navigation. And now you can see that we've got a bunch of different things. You can just go through the documentation this way, which can be helpful if you have more questions. But you see that UR here goes to shading and lighting, shader tree item layers, and then enhance Modo textures, and then rivets is the page that we're on. So if I click back one level to enhance Modo textures, you see that I have all of the different categories. Here's the display with the counters, geometrics, we can see all the different types. Here's our noise textures, there's quite a few. Here's our organic textures. Here are our panels. And here are our processes, skins, space, tiles, and you can see that there's something here for all of the individual textures. And this way, you can go in and you can, one, get a real quick visual reference as to what's going on, and that's going to speed up your procedure here because you can look through here, through the organic textures and say, okay, what I'm looking for kind of falls in line with Crackle, so I can choose the Crackle and then go from there. But you can also get more detail on this. So if I click on Crackle, you'll see it'll bring me to a page just for Crackle, and it's going to give me a description along with kind of what all of the individual layers are going to do here. Okay, so really this is going to be all pretty much the same through most of the enhanced Modo textures, so you won't probably need to come in here, but this page that has all of your references can be super valuable and something that I would really recommend looking at if you're going to be building more procedural textures. All right, so that's a quick look at the enhanced Modo textures, and it's another tool in your toolkit, another weapon in your arsenal for creating your textures inside of Modo. So between these and the regular default textures, you have a lot of work that you can do. So there is one more category of procedural textures that we'll look at in the next lesson, and that's going to be process textures. And process textures on their own are mildly valuable, but when you couple them with the other procedural textures that we've looked at, and then with image-based textures, which we'll look at after that, you'll get to see the full power of Modo's texturing engine for creating deep and complex textures. That does it for this one. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next lesson.